Indonesia is a country in the Southeast Asian region. It happens to be the biggest Southeast Asian country, being about 714 square kilometers. It is an archipelagic country, which means it is geographically consisting of several islands. In Indonesia's case, it's about 17,000 to 18,000 islands. In the 15th century, it became a target for European colonialism, mainly targeted for its natural resources. In 1602, the Dutch East India Company was established and they ruled over Indonesia. After their bankruptcy in 1800, they were dissolved and the Netherlands government established the Dutch East Indies, which took over the rule in Indonesia. In 1942, the Dutch rule ended with the Japanese invasion during World War II, spanning until 1945. In this period of time was when Indonesian nationalism has reached its next stage and they realized the need for independence free from any colonial powers. So by the end of the Japanese rule in 1945, nationalist leader Sukarno declared independence and became the president of Indonesia. The Dutch, after World War II, tried to regain control and there began a armed struggle between the Indonesian forces and the Dutch forces, spanning until 1949. When international pressure caused the Dutch to pull out of Indonesia and recognize Indonesia as its own independent and sovereign state.
The first issues that are going to be discussed in Indonesia is political issues. For starter, Indonesia uses a unitary presidential republic as their form of government. This means that it is a unified nation with power centralized at the national level. The president, who is elected by the people to serve a maximum of 2 5-year terms, is the head of state, also is the head of the government. The nation has a multi-party system of governance, a varied political environment, and frequent democratic election. For the first issue in Indonesia is corruption. Corruption has long been a significant issue in Indonesian politics and society. Despite efforts to combat it, corruption remains pervasive at various levels of government and business. More than 8 in 10 Indonesians say that corruption is widespread throughout the nation's government and businesses. Compared with citizens in other Southeast Asian countries, Indonesians are much more likely to say that corruption is prevalent in both the government and business sectors. According to Corruption Perceptions Index, Indonesia has a score of 34 this year, with a change of 0 since last year, meaning it ranks 115 out of 180 countries in corruption. The next political issue in Indonesia is democratic decline. Most scholars now generally agree that Indonesia's democratic has not just stalled but is actually declining. Although Indonesia's democratic might have appeared durable under the Joko Widodo administration, the beginnings of regression might have become more apparent during the last 5 years. For example, a massive demonstrations against the government's proposed change to criminal code, which criminalized most forms of abortion and insulting the president, as well as introduced changes that would weaken the Corruption Eradication Commission, or known as KPK. Those demonstrations were organized by student organizations in September of 2020 in major capital cities. It is becoming increasingly apparent that Jokowi is willing to compromise on certain liberties in order to further his developmentalist objective and is not primarily committed to democracy.
Social condition in Indonesia. For starter, is religion in Indonesia. Religion plays a major role in life in Indonesia, which has the largest population of Muslims in the world. Many different religions are practiced in Indonesia and their collective influence on the country's political, economic, and cultural life is significant. Even people are free to choose their own belief. Their government, however, officially only recognizes 6 religions, namely Islam, Hinduism, Protestantism, Catholicism, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Confucianism. Move to the next aspect is Indonesia is home to over 1,300 ethnic groups, each with distinct language, custom, and traditions. The remarkable diversity saves social interaction, fostering a spirit of tolerance and respect for differences. People still communicate with each other, even though its differences among them, and this will lead to the next aspect. While progress has been made in expanding access to healthcare and education, disparities persist, particularly in remote and rural areas. They still using traditional method in medication process instead of science and modernization. Even nowadays, it already revealed to the whole world about the effectiveness. And study also shown that the cost of purchasing medicines is the one of the obstacles that why people still using the old ways of medication. Quality healthcare and education remain out of reach for many Indonesians, contributing to social inequality.
Economic issues in Indonesia. So one big issue that many point to is the wealth inequality. There is a huge gap between the wealthy and impoverished, and this causes a huge divide in terms of quality of life and social cohesion. So one of the causes as to why this tends to happen is one of the reasons attributed is the lack of education. There is not enough infrastructure being provided to different parts of the country because of how big Indonesia is. It's really difficult to equally distribute and set up infrastructure in a way that everyone can enjoy the same thing. So inevitably certain areas will get neglected. Another reason is because of its inefficient investment costs. The incremental capital output ratio is an indicator of how much investment needs to be added in to support one unit of output. And in Indonesia's case, it is relatively high, being 6.2% in 2022. So this inefficiency is seen as very unattractive to many foreign investors, which is why not a lot of foreign investments come into the country. And one of the last reasons people talk about is the slow growth of the key economic drivers in Indonesia, normally being the agricultural, mining, and processing sector. All this has caused some issues in the economic development and stability of Indonesia.
Now, we will continue with security issues in Indonesia. Let's begin with the threat of terrorism. Extremist groups like Jemaah Islamiyah continue to pose significant threats to Indonesia's security. However, the government is effectively countering these through intelligence sharing initiatives and targeted law enforcement operations. Indonesia's extensive archipelago faces challenges such as illegal fishing and piracy. Strengthening maritime law enforcement and fostering regional cooperation are essential to address these threats effectively. Next, cybersecurity has increasingly becoming a global concern. With the rapid digitization of its economy, Indonesia is prioritizing cybersecurity measures. Efforts are underway to enhance infrastructure and raise awareness to mitigate cyber threats effectively.
To wrap up, Indonesia faces a range of domestic issues across politics, security, economy, and social aspects. Yet, the country has shown resilience in tackling these challenges. Through measures like intelligence sharing and law enforcement, Indonesia has made progress in countering terrorism and ensuring maritime security. Enhancing cybersecurity and promoting socio-economic development are also key priorities. Moving forward, fostering inclusivity and dialogue will be crucial for maintaining social harmony. By embracing its cultural diversity, Indonesia can overcome obstacles and pave the way for a brighter future. With determination and collaboration, Indonesia can continue on its path towards prosperity and stability for its people and the region.